Sean Haney here with RealAgriculture.com. We are at the Farm Progress Show in Regina, and I'm joined right now by
Faye Dokken-Bouchard.
Faye, how are you doing today?
Good, thanks.
It's been a while since we had you on RealAgriculture.com. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, press release went out today, big announcement. What is the new feature that has to do with Fusarium that you had a big hand in developing?
Right, well, it's the Saskatchewan Wheat Development Commission website now has a Fusarium head blight risk map. So this was brought by the Wheat Development Commission as well as Weather Innovations Network, who have the weather stations and provide the model and put it into a map form that we can provide to take a look and see what our Fusarium head blight risk is. So my role in that is to provide extension and to help people understand how best to use the map, because it's not just a standalone thing that we want to look at and use as our only tool in managing the disease. So we kind of have a step-by-step process that we can go through and see what our risk is and what we should do about it for Fusarium control.
So it sounds like this is a bit of a live, because of the weather stations, it's a bit of a live map. It's not necessarily like a static, here's data from the last 5 years. It's more like, based on conditions right now or in this short little time period, here's the risk that you may be facing on your farm.
Yes, exactly. It gets updated every day, and there's actually 11 maps on the website per day. And so it's very important to know which map to choose from those 11 maps and look at to get the best risk estimate for your field, and then continue to look at the maps as they change every day, because your risk might change as well. So how you choose the map from those 11 maps is based on the calendar. So there's a little drop-down calendar, and what you're looking for is to choose the date where you think that your crop will be most likely to be fully headed out. So when this would be the part that kind of corresponds to a fungicide application. Fungicides can be applied when 75% of the heads on the main stems are fully headed. So that means when they're fully out of that flag leaf, you can see the entire head, but they haven't started flowering yet. And so that's going to be the date that you choose your map based on. So you will say that day is 5 days away, you can pick that heading date and look at the map today, the next day, the day after. As it gets closer to the actual heading date, you'll have the best kind of assessment of the risk, but you need to take all of those days into consideration, and your decision might change as you get closer to the time that you'd actually spray on whether you'll spray or not.
Fusarium is not a disease where I didn't have it last year, why would I have it this year? It's really a disease that you have to manage in the growing season and make those preventative decisions based on the conditions and where your crop is, correct?
Correct, yeah. And many diseases are very much reliant on the weather conditions as being the main thing that you have to think about and determining your risk. Whether you had it last year or not is still important, and if you look on the website with the map, there is a step-by-step kind of process to go through in assessing your risk. And so the first thing we have in those steps is to assess whether or not that pathogen is established in your field or in your region. And so that there'll be different factors that come into that, whether you've had Fusarium in your seed test before, whether you've had Fusarium downgrading before, which would be an indication you've had Fusarium damage, and then that kind of goes into whether it was last year or the year before or 4 years ago. So your rotation will be part of that as well. If you haven't had a susceptible crop for 4 years, then your risk will be much lower than if you're growing a susceptible crop on a place where you had it in the last couple of years. So knowing what you've had in the past is still important, but that's just going to be the first step. The second step is looking at your crop, what kind of variety you have, what's the resistance of your crop, and then what stage your crop is at. And then after that, your next step will be to actually look at the map. So you really need to do your homework first, and then look at the map to see what your risk is, and then take all of those into consideration. It's kind of that disease triangle concept of pathogen, host, and environment. And the map helps us determine that environment component of the disease triangle.
For a lot of us, when we're trying to manage the disease in our crops, we sort of sometimes we have these sort of tales we've been told, or we've made up maybe in our own head to justify our own decisions. It's been dry so far. Does that have any impact on whether or not I'm going to have Fusarium at the end of the day?
It definitely does, and in fact, the weather conditions that we've had are monitored by the weather stations that the map is being generated from. So the map will be a reflection of probably the drier conditions that we've had if we were to look at the map today. However, it's middle of June right now. Our spring wheat crops are not going to be close to heading yet. Yeah. So if you were to look at the map today, it's not going to be a good assessment of your risk for Fusarium head blight. As it gets closer to heading, if the weather changes and we get some more moist conditions, if we have enough moisture and kind of warmer conditions that are conducive for the pathogen to sporulate and to be able to cause infection, then that risk will change. And so it's important to keep an eye on it and not just assume that because we've had dry conditions until now that we don't have any risk, but certainly if it continues, then there'll be a lower risk, which will be reflected by the map.
Okay, very important question we haven't talked about yet. What's the website?
Oh, it's on the Sask Wheat Development Commission website. So if you Google the Wheat Development Commission, or if you look for saskwheatcommission.com, there'll be a link to it on their main banner on their page.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today, Faye. It was great to see you again, and hopefully we'll get you on the site more often.
All right, thanks a lot.
You bet. Thanks,